So welcome everyone to the Hilo Orchid Society's February meeting. Got another beautiful day in Hilo, and I appreciate everybody taking time out this afternoon to join us for a Zoom meeting today. We have a special guest visiting us on the Big Island to give us a presentation on Sobralias here a little bit later. But before I get to that, I wanted to get through a couple of announcements I wanted to share with the society. So first one I have is we're in our membership renewal. So last I checked with Ellen Train, we're probably less than 25% with renewals for this year. So we're hoping that we could give you a little reminder and have you catch up on that and get our members renewed for 2022. On my second announcement, last meeting we talked about the Orchid Isle project, and Ellen Train has taken the lead on that project, and we're off to a great start. She's had a couple of volunteers come and help her since our last meeting, so everything's going good. But she did share with me that she could use some donations of orchid pots and bark. So if any of our members would like to donate, if you got some orchid bark or some orchid pots, that would help us out a lot to get those orchids ready and repotted and ready to be placed in the different projects that we're going to take on later this year. If you have the opportunity, you could respond to the society email, which is info@hiloorchidsociety.org, and send us a quick email on what you have to share as far as bark and pots, and Ellen will reach out to you and coordinate to make sure we can get those. Another announcement I have is our scholarship committee chair, Shelly Norwalkie, has resigned. I guess she's after 2 years, things are getting busy in her personal life, and she would like to hand over the reins to the next person to head that committee. First, I'd like to thank Shelly for all of her hard work. She's volunteered for the last 2 years on the scholarship committee, and those 2 years have probably been the most challenging, given that we hadn't had an orchid show, which is our main fundraiser for the scholarship fund. And it also ended up being probably the most, as far as demand for students in need, given kind of where the economy was and with schooling and stuff. So we're very proud to continue offering our scholarships during that time period without disruption. So we're in pretty good shape with the scholarship committee, and we're just looking for someone to take over the reins from Shelly. She's more than willing to help you with her contacts and to get organized and get you on the ground running. So if you have any interest in that, you can also reach out to us on the Hilo Orchid Society email again. That's info@hiloorchidsociety.org. Probably my last announcement I have is a set the date. So I've been reaching out with the recreation department with the county, and I've talked to the head person there for Edith Kanakaoli Stadium, and he has reserved the last week in June for our Orchid Society event. So I just wanted to share. I've been getting questions as to, do we have a date for 2022? We do have a date, and it's that last weekend in June. So that'll be, for people attending, will be the 26th through the 29th of June. The challenge we got is they are holding the date, but we have to get approval for the county for our event through their COVID event approval. So I'm working through that now. I'm pretty optimistic I'm going to be able to get what we did last year, which was a sale, given that we were successful last year during COVID to put on a sale. So that's going to be my first attempt, is to get approval for that. And depending on how COVID activity proceeds through this spring, there's a desire to go back and see if we could build upon that and see if we can get approval for a scale back show. So that's still a lot of work to work through yet, but definitely looking to have some kind of event for that last weekend in June. So I wanted to share that with the Orchid Society so you guys can put that date on your calendar, and I'll continue to update the society as I get approval from the county on what our event will look like. All right.
So did you say, Carl, the 26th through the 29th?
Yeah, so that'll be like the Thursday through Sunday. And then typically we set up the Monday through Wednesday for the show. If we
Well,
do a
the
show.
calendar doesn't look like that.
Oh,
The
maybe
calendar
that-
looks like the
What do you got
26th
there?
is Sunday
Oh, is it that?
and the 29th is a Thursday, right, Rick?
Okay. Let me look real quick here. I probably got that. So yeah, I guess would be, yeah, so I guess would be the 23rd through the 26th would be the day.
Oh,
Thanks, Ruth,
okay.
for keeping me square on that.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
Anybody else have any questions on the announcements? Okay. With
Oh,
that,
Carl?
go ahead. Yes, Larry.
So Matthias had a suggestion for an announcement about the Hono Hono orchids that were given away to people.
Okay, so I think Matthias is on. So are you on, Matthias?
Yes, I am.
You wanna?
Well, hello, everybody. Happy Aloha Saturday. Just want to mention that, all the Hono Hono orchids that were given out, I planted some, of course, myself, and they're already coming all into spike or in bud, so to say. So please watch your Hono Hono. Don't water them too much right now. I would say once a week. Keep them in a warm, sunny place, and they should actually be in flower this year early, in my opinion. Normally it's more like April, but mine are already budding, and my buds are almost, I would say, a third of an inch. So they're very fast this year. So please watch out, and no fertilizer, almost no water, and make sure no water coming on the foliage or the buds. And if you're in a very humid area, meaning here on the Hilo side, make sure that you still spray them with an insecticide and the fungicide to make sure that the buds don't get spotted. That's my message. Good, buddy.
All right, thank you very much, Matthias. Yeah, we're hopefully people will start sharing on the show and tell, their Hono Hono orchids that they got last year. All right, with that, we're going to move to our presentation. We have a special guest here on island. Her name is Nina Rach, and she comes to us via Texas. So she was the former president of the Houston, Texas Orchid Society. She has also been an AOS judge for 30 years. And she just shared an interesting insight to her, in that she was into orchids at a very early age, like 11 years old, and was even a society member too at that age. So you're talking about a hardcore orchid enthusiast with getting a big jump on her love of orchids. So she's here to share a presentation on the culture of Sobralia orchids. And I'm gonna, let's see, we should probably get a look. She could probably just say hi so you can see her before we just switch to sharing my screen and you don't know who she is. So if everyone's ready, I'm gonna go ahead and switch to share the screen for the presentation.
And we'll hope it works.
Oh, and then share.
Share. Yay, okay. All right, can I move forward from there? Okay,
Everybody hearing us okay?
Yes, and it looks good. So we can hear you too.
okay. Well, great. Thanks for spending a Saturday afternoon doing this. Looking forward to also going to the judging when we're done with this meeting. It's a shame we couldn't all get together in person, honestly, but I think we're making the best of the situation. So I'm here to talk about Sobralias. Can I hear from folks? Does anybody grow them in this group? I know Matthias does, but
I
anyone
do.
else?
I
Deb?
grow them, yeah, up in Canada.
Great, okay. Others?
I have Larry, I have one of them.
Okay,
Yeah, this is Julie, and I have one in the center garden up into the air that is growing under tree ferns, and it's just become huge. It's like a giant bush about 4 feet tall.
great, great. All right, so
Yeah.
there's some experience online right now. with-
Yeah, Nina's been looking at my garden and she says that my garden would be a perfect spot for
Oh.
growing
Yes,
Sobralia. So I'm on a mission now. I'm gonna find some so that next time she visits, she can say, here's
yeah.
my Sobralia orchids.
Yeah, so we've looked at a couple presentations this morning and decided on this one, the culture rather than taxonomy. I didn't know if in a Sunday afternoon with wonderful weather, you'd all want to hear about orchid taxonomy. So we'll move on from here. Got two different color forms. You can see there are some beautiful leaves involved. They don't drop leaves. They're not deciduous. They make lovely landscaping plants, and the smaller dwarf varieties make nice pot plants through the year. All right, let's move on. Will it work? Let's see. Can we press that again? There we go. Okay, look familiar? On the Big Island. This was shared with me just a few, 2 weeks ago, a week ago, I think. Shared, not sure whether this is a Macrantha alba or not. Do you know if it's a species or hybrid?
I think
It's
that
a
question is for Matthias.
Yep.
Clutchiana, I think.
Clutchiana, okay, good.
Yep.
You can see that it makes a fantastically well-rounded shrubby plant in a relatively small pot in this case, on the right at least, next to that lovely puppy dog. And so they can be fantastic for landscaping, and you have a wonderful climate here to grow these, you know. Next, we'll move on. So here's a quote which I absolutely adored when I found it. I suspect that fails should be illegal. They may seem like a harmless decor item and a pleasant house plant, but they're a gateway drug to some of the hard stuff, such as Sobralia or even Angraecum. Sobralias are not hard. If you can grow these outside, pleasant climate, pretty easy. A lot of them. The biggest problems are higher elevation things, as with anything else. Most people know of Sobralia macrantha, which is the most commonly grown one, commonly in cultivation. They have massively large root systems. This photograph was, I wish I could remember, we're either in Guatemala here or southern Florida, but they can be grown out in the garden and look absolutely stunning. Next. The root systems, these are Sobralia seedlings, and that is in Indiana at Hoosier Orchids, which is sadly, I think, no more. They did a good bit of hybridizing and have registered a few hybrids. In the lower right, there's a photo. It might be covered by some of the faces of folks if you have a vertical bar showing participants. That is, Sobralia is wider than a dollar bill, US dollar bill. Next. Okay. Oh, great. There's the article. So there have been a lot of publications about Sobralias. This is one that was in the Orchid Digest back in 2009. Bruce Rogers, who's one of the big growers and hybridizers of Sobralias, promoting them. He does lots of interesting work. I visited him a few times, seeing what he's growing. He was kind enough to register a hybrid after me, Sobralia Nina Rach, which is about that time, maybe 2010, I think. Next. We have to go a little fast because I've got 75 slides in here. So there's Bruce. Some of you may know him already. West Coast. He grows quite a number of plants, some really interesting stuff. all different colors. Yes. A lot of book covers, believe it or not, have Sobralias on the cover, orchid books. Here's you've probably seen these books around in different places. It's a stylized Macrantha on the left, Venezuelan orchids. It's an old series. Those are wonderful, the 6 volumes of that. And then Native Colombian Orchids has Sobralia on one of the volumes as well. That's done alphabetically, so it's in the volume containing S. Next. They've been grown in collections since the 1800s in Europe. Okay, a brief bit on biology. So the photo on the right just shows a Sobralia seedling out of a pot, gripped in a hand. It might be my husband's hand. I think it was. And you can see the roots there, very fleshy roots. You have to be careful if you're going to repot these not to break them. So you want to water really heavily before you unpot or try to plant. Make sure they're moist and slightly flexible. So they're reedy. You've seen from a few photos that they're mostly terrestrial. You do see a few of them growing in trees when you're out in the jungle. They have very fleshy roots. Be very careful with the repotting. The inflorescences, before I go into that, there are 3 main groups of Sobralias, and one group is defined entirely by the fact that they have terminal inflorescences. Another is defined by having cone-shaped terminal inflorescences, and the other has flowers along the stem. So they can be terminal, lateral, near the top, few flowered. Flowers are ephemeral. It's a big, big problem with the genus, and it's probably why a lot of people don't grow them. And you're setting up to go sell plants at an orchid show. You may have, 200 Sobralias set aside, and they may or may not be blooming on any given day. And it's a real problem. When you're in nature, hillsides will generally, many places, they will all bloom on the same day. And you can go through a valley and it will look fantastic in Ecuador one day, and the next day they will have faded already. So it's a hit or miss thing. And if you're relying on that to actually make a buck and make a living, it might be tough for commercials to sell Sobralias except to collectors. And that may be that, and the fact that most of them are fairly large, medium to large rather, may be why we don't see them grown more widely. However, in the tropics, they've been used as bedding plants in so many plastic places that I think we should see them more widely grown, especially here on the orchid aisle. So the lip is entire or 2-lobed adnate connected. There are 8 pollinia, and they will grow to some really extreme altitudes, 8,800 feet. Those are the ones I can't touch. I just mentioned, whisper Houston to them and they will fall over, and that'll be it. Next. But there are plenty of warm growing things that we can handle, and as well as intermediates. All right, here's the one slide on taxonomy. Just bear with me here. The lectotype is Dichotoma. That's what's pictured at right, the upper right. The earliest taxonomist, rather, to mention this genus, plants in this genus, are Lindley, Reichenbach, Rolf, Schlechter, Kranzlin. These are names you've, I'm sure, heard in many places. The regional specialists for the different areas. Oh, and let me say that the number of species increases from north to south across Central America and into South America. So you do see several species in Mexico, and it increases dramatically as you approach Panama. The specialists have been Oak Ames, Schweinfurth, Paul Allen, of course, Robert Dressler. And then for South America, Leslie Gray, Dunsterville, Callaway Dodson, Rafael Romero, still working, Bennett, Christensen, passed on, of course. And in Brazil, there are some people, Brazilian orchidists, Hun, Pabst, Menzies. There are a number of people who've really worked a lot and published on these. So you can find information if you want it. Next. But not normally in basic orchid books for beginners. Okay, so species distribution, and there are at least 100 species already published, and there are plenty more to come. When Bob Dressler died a few years ago, he had so many things he had still to work on, and I'm hoping that somebody will adopt his paperwork and research material and get things published over the next few years. At any rate, you can see the species distribution for all the different countries listed on the left from north to south. Quite a number. There's a peak in Central America, and that's Costa Rica. And why is it there? It's because the Dresslers lived there. He had access to a lot of material. They went out into the field a lot. And certainly they researched and worked in other places. He lived in Panama with the Smithsonian for quite a number of years. And so you can see the gray bar in the Central American section is also quite high. Down in South America, where do you see the peaks? You see the peaks in Ecuador. That's the green peak. And why is that? Because there are botanists living in Ecuador who worked on it, and as well as people from other countries who had ties to the botanists in Ecuador. So it really has to do with who you know, where you live, how well botanized an area is. For instance, back in Central America, there's a low for El Salvador. Not a big surprise. There aren't too many people working out of El Salvador who are orchid taxonomists. Okay, so that's our more or less our distribution. Those are the species that have been identified to date, or at least, a few years back. And it has to do more with the distribution of the taxonomists in some cases than anything else, although it does trail off towards Southern South America, as you can see. I'm trying very carefully to do this. Okay, slide advance. Yeah, I needed another slide in between here, but in the first decade of this century, there were 34 species that were published. These are names that you were not going to ever find for sale. They're new things, except for Portia, I guess. Yeah, Gloriana has actually been for sale, Chrysotoma. The colors are, you can see I've keyed out the name of the species based on the country it comes from in some cases. So Cardoso is a Brazilian one. The Panamanian and Costa Rican species, which are in a teal and a yellow, are Dressler's plants that he had personally wrote up in a valid format to allow them to reach species state. And then Eric Christensen worked Peru. And a lot of these are named for folks you have probably heard of. Maduro in Panama, Marnie Turkle is represented here, Carl Withner for Withneri, number of others. Next. Good, almost there. We'll get there, hang on. There we go, Cardoso. This was in 2009. It's not the newest for us, but in 2009 it was. So it was found in 92. And how long did that take? It took almost 20 years, 18 years to get published. It can take a long time. Everybody's backlogged. There aren't enough taxonomists. There's not a lot of business work in taxonomy. You need support from a university or a government to be doing this. So there are people out there finding new things all the time. And this is a terrestrial that mostly grows on rock, so a lithophyte with a thin organic layer. When I've found them in the wild and looked at their root systems, the roots can stretch 10 feet away from the plant, shallow, through clay, through leaf litter. It's remarkable how long these root systems are. Next. Okay, out in the field, here we are in the Venezuelan Andes, giving no thought at all to all the snakes that are probably on these roadsides, but you see these things when it's a good blooming day and you go up and you look at them, take a lot of photos. So these are gregarious blooming plants across a hillside, and you'll look at a hillside of white Sobralias species, and then you'll see a single purple or another color form, a rare color form among them. Next. Generally all the same species. This was one of my absolute favorites that I have ever seen. I got to do a field trip in the Grand Sabana, which means in Spanish, it means a big savanna, large savanna. And it's a national park. I believe it's the largest national park in the world. And it occupies a huge amount of Venezuela, like the entire southern third or so. It's this species grows up there in what would be stream beds when there are rains in full sun, and it grows even better if you can find it in a cliffy overhang where the roots are kept cooler and it's got a little bit of shade. Then it's really absolutely beautiful. You can see the petals are upswept, It's a lovely thing. They're not very big, just maybe 2 inches across the flowers, but it's got a beautiful hirsute callus, the center of the lip. You see those little white hairs coming up from the flower, and just a lovely pink picotee edge to it. There's a range of shades of pink. Most of them are pretty good, vivid color. Some of them are extremely deep, and once in a while you'll see a pale one, but most were just really attractive. And they're very short, they're small growing. If there was any way to get this into cultivation, it would be just a knockout thing to have as a pot plant. Next. There were things with many more flowers than that. My sad story is that when I was down there, I had a digital camera, and at the end of my 10-day trip through the Grand Savannah, my husband was messing around with it before his coffee at breakfast, and he reformatted. Yeah. Anyway, lost hundreds of photos. Okay, Ecuadorian Andes. We're pretty high up here. There are different Sobralias growing here, as well as Elianthus, tube-shaped orange and red flowers, yellow in some cases, which are pollinated mostly by hummingbirds. Next. You don't want to try to, well, you might try to grow these here if you get a good enough diurnal variation, but biggest challenge Gulf Coast is that we don't have that. It doesn't, the temperatures don't drop for us at night in the summertime, and it's a real problem. Okay, often terrestrial, mostly terrestrial. They can be epiphytic. Here are 2 photos of epiphytic Sobralias, left and right. One is growing in a greenhouse. That is at Selby Gardens on the left, and the photo on the right is, could be Venezuela or Ecuador. Yeah, next. Or both. You can find, this is the same species. This is Xantholuca, southern Mexico, Chiapas area, and it can grow as an epiphyte on the left or terrestrial on the right. Close up of the leaves, and there's a 6-inch ruler at the bottom. Next. No, sorry, that was a 12-inch ruler. Right, so when you go to a big show, such as the Redlands or any other place that might attract foreign vendors, you often find Sobralias offered for sale, and you will see them like this, or perhaps a plastic bag wrapped around the net root pack. And the problem with this is that there aren't nearly enough roots there to support a plant like that. And I have spent more than enough money. I have all of these die on me, so I prefer to see the root system before I purchase. Next. Buying bare root is a gamble, not for the faint-hearted. You're looking on the right at a new shoot coming out, right in the center bottom of the photo. And you can see there the two new shoots, new growths coming out. I'll try to hit this again. It's my wide-eyed caffeinated look. I'm trying to advance. There we go. So if you can, it's really better to buy a potted established plant if you really want to get these going rather than bare root. Bare root's just very often a waste of money for me. And these are much healthier. Next. They make great deck plants also. Cal Orchid carries a number of Sobralias, and they've named them, they've registered a few hybrids, and they've named them for some people. You can get potted plants. Well, you're here in Hawaii, you have other sources, but in the mainland, we usually have to look around at shows locally. Next. Starting with seedlings is a great idea. I love growing them from seed, or from seedling stage, not from seed. I don't do any of my own flasking, but I keep things in, as you see on the left, in plastic containers. Great stuff at dollar stores. Oak Hill used to grow quite a number of these, but they don't anymore since they're folded up. Tropical Orchid Farm in Maui has a variety of Sobralias that they've offered over the years. Next. This is Decora, Sobralia Decora on the left side, the 2 photos. Brilliant magenta, really pretty, and it's a very short growing plant, easy for pots. It's not, I guess you could put them in the garden in front of other shrubbier Sobralias, but they're lovely. Take a look at the root system on the right. If you don't repot or up, you can see it's gone through the hardware cloth top of my benches. They're really robust. They feed pretty heavily too. So I use a lot of throw and grow fertilizers in addition to dilute. Next, just like with Cymbidium, Now, how would you divide, really just pot them up pot them bigger for the most part. Like I said, if you do really feel like you need or want to divide, expect some setbacks and make sure everything's really wet so that the roots will be more flexible. Next. So a few Sobralias that you might want to try growing. Sorry, is that a bit of a put off, that a list that long? These are Sobralias that have been offered for sale in the last couple dozen years or so that I've seen at different vendors. I'm not going to read the whole screen. There are quite a number. Macrantha is the easiest one to find. Sicilis also, Virginalis, beautiful white. Next, Xantholuca. Mexican Xantholuca. Chula orchids, the first FCC given to a Sobralia, Voodoo Princess. Very beautiful, huge, must be a triploid or a tetraploid. I can't remember how large this flower was, 8 inches across or more. Next, rich color. There's a variety. Many things are called Macrantha. Remember what I wanted to say here. They come in a variety of shades of pink and purple. They actually look pretty different. And I believe the slide after this is Rogersia. Yes, it is Rogersiana. So this was called an exquisitely well-formed Macrantha for years. It's a separate species, very large flowers, always bright, richly colored. These are not Macrantha. I've seen them growing. I was taken by local folks in Guatemala to see them growing and collected seed pods. And Rogers, it's named for Bruce Rogers, which is a fantastic thing to have named after you. This particular plant was grown by Cynthia Hill. It's not my photo. But it's only from these countries. And if you see a particularly well-grown, large flowered, brilliant colored thing that's marked with good form, reasonably good form, maybe the dorsal's twisted, but then it's almost certainly going to be a Rogersiana and not a Macrantha. Next. So as you can see those just back in 2007 that Eric Christensen differentiated that officially. So Macrantha, a number of hybrids have been made over the years with Macrantha, and the very first one was in 1894, right? It's a long time ago to be registering with Q. The cross, a lithograph of the cross is in the upper right at this slide. That's Xantholuca with Macrantha. And then a few decades later, they crossed Veitchii for a second generation hybrid back onto Xantholuca. And Mirabilis is in the lower left of the slide. That's Veitchiana crossed back again on Macrantha. So they did the back cross 2 different ways, within a decade and a half. Then a few others, in the turn of the century, Rosea with Macrantha, and then a few other things, you can see on the slide, but even Shinjik in 1923. So this is a good group of very early hybrids, early in the RHS registration system. Next. Xantholuca. Here are photos that I received from an orchid grower in Mexico, and I did not take them. I have not yet been to Chiapas, but I would like to go. This is Xantholuca in the wild. Now, there's also a Sobralia called Leucoxantha, which is white colored. Next. And they have been crossed together. Well, I'll get to that. Meanwhile, Xantholuca, after Macrantha, the most number of hybrids made with any Sobralia species is Xantholuca. I'm sure because of the rich yellow color. You can see that started back in 1894 and crossed through Amesii. That's named for Oaks Ames. It was already named in 95. Baron O'Hara, Wiganii. Yep, next. Here's Leucoxantha, right? We looked at Xantholuca, which has exquisitely nice form, and it's a bright yellow color. Leucoxantha form is not nice. I have not seen a great one. They're hooded flowers. The lip is lovely, though. If you look at the lower photo on the left, that's a nice broad lip and maybe funnel shaped, yes, but opens out nicely. So folks have crossed this. Next. Oddly enough, the Eric Young Orchid Foundation on the Isle of Jersey made the hybrid and called it La Folie. Bruce Rogers, though, registered it. I don't know how long ago, how long before that. I don't know how long it was when the folks at Eric Young made the hybrid and when Bruce registered it. But you can see it's clearly a cross between the two of them. It's believable. Next. Okay, Decora. Decora is a great pot plant. It's lovely on patios. It's a good intermediate sized Sobralia, and the flowers will last for more than a day. This is a wonderful thing to grow. There should be more of these sold. Everybody should be growing Decora. It's much smaller than Macrantha. It's not as unwieldy as Macrantha is, and it makes a lovely display. You can see in the left, the flowers can cover the plant and be really attractive. Next. I heartily recommend Decora. You can cross it with Leucasantha. You get odd flowers. It's sort of an intermediate stage. I don't think it's the end all. This is not my photo, this one. Next. Sicilis is very nice to grow, also larger than Decora, but not as Macrantha. And the petals are lying directly on the lateral sepals, but it's got that beautiful rich color in the center of the lip. And they're pretty large flowers. They're bigger than Decora flowers are. It's a Brazilian species. You used to be able to purchase these. Make it in. Okay, moving on. Another large flowered one. Sometimes these are mislabeled as Macranthas, but they generally have blue tones in them, which Macranthas do not have. Is Varspixia, and there are some very bluish ones. This one on the left is growing in a shade house ground in Coral Gables, at someone's house. When he passed away and his wife was distributing his orchid collection, they were trying to dig it out, and apparently it was quite a scene to try to get the plant out of the ground. Next, the one in the center is in Costa Rica at Arenal. Next. Violacea, very attractive. I've not grown Violacea before. It's an Andean plant. You can't really do it well on the Gulf Coast, but you might be able to do it here with your cooler evening temperatures. Next. That was a 19th century lithograph on the left. Virginalis is nice to grow. I grow it in Houston. Doesn't necessarily last for many years, but but I can grow it and bloom it a couple times before it dies. Don't have one right now. Antioquia, which is a lovely area in Colombia. Lots of orchid shows there, and I'm finding it increasingly safe to go to Colombia for shows. I've gone 4 times now, and will certainly go again. Losa is so tiny. The photo on the left is from Greg Alakas. Actually, he took both of these. And has said I could use them. It's a Panamanian species, super large flowers considering the size of the plant. And another delightful thing, as long as we can get more seed out there and get people to cultivate it, I'm sure it would be extremely popular as a pot plant. I've purchased plants of it at the big sale at Redlands before. Next, in southern Florida. Melanothrix, I've grown this. That's my 2 of these photos are all, no, they're all my photos, but in my backyard, on the left or front yard. It's a lovely thing, and it grows about 3 feet tall. You can see it's nice to have some rich gold colors like this. They're not all just pinks and lavenders. And the color variety on the right, I'm trying to remember where I got that one. Different place. Most of them look like the one on the left. Next. So it's an intermediate grower. Atripubescens, similar looking, but from Central America rather than South America. Okay, here's a cross of Sicilis. The 2 parents are on the left, Atripubescens at top, Sicilis at bottom, and there's the hybrid, oddly enough. So with Sicilis, again, the petals lay directly on the lateral sepals, and that's not with Atripubescens, but you do have a color something intermediate here in form. Next. Okay, attributescens with Bushii. Bushii is a very interesting fimbriate lip Sobralia, and there are several different fimbriate lip Sobralias, but what I really liked, I didn't make this hybrid, but I was just amazed at the striping that came out in the sepals and the petals. That's in the lower right-hand corner. And you can see on the lip also, you see how many calli, how many ridges there are on the lip? That's also kind of unusual to have that many in a Sobralia. And these are terminal inflorescences, right? I should have been pointing that out along the way. Many are. Rosea is lovely, comes in different shades. There's a near blue, which is a photo at the upper left. Mostly it's a pinkish rose color. And you might get an extremely good flower like the one on the lower right, which looks open and flat. And it looks like it probably has fabulous substance, but it really doesn't. They fade after a day. Next, higher elevation. Madisonii. These are from the Atlanta Botanic Garden. I don't think I took these. I think they gave me these photos. And I have not grown it. What's cool about this, though, I've seen these plants there, and they weren't in bloom when I went, and that's why they sent me the photos. That's right. So the back of the leaves have, although here it shows the red dots on the front. That's typical in the species to have this speckling on the leaves, which almost looks like an overdose of anthocyanin, right? And then it has greenish flowers. Whenever you see anthocyanin in a leaf or in the tissues of a plant, you might expect to find those pigments in the flowers. And this was always a surprise to me that it's a green flowered species. Next. Okay, so here's the foliage. These plants now were at the AOS greenhouses after they moved to the new facility in Florida. Well, before they moved south, before they moved to Fairchild, when they built a big greenhouse at headquarters, they had a plant collection there for a while. And they had some Madisonii there too, which was kind of interesting. And you can see, again, the heavy pigmentation. So it's anyone's guess why the flowers were solid green. Next. Attractive plants, though. Here's Bushii again with the fimbriate lip, which is a lovely thing. Panama. Lower elevation, you can grow it in intermediate conditions. Next. Candida, featured on a postage stamp. Candida will also grow epiphytically, which is interesting. Small flowers, not particularly attractively colored, just a sort of an off-white thing, and they're not very large plants. There was a photo earlier of a tree that was on the right side of the slide, and that was Candida also. Next. It's not native to Ghana, and I'm always surprised when countries will publish stamps showing plants that aren't native to their countries. It's so odd. Like carnations from odd places. Fimbriata, really lovely. My photo on the left and that photo on the lower right is Marcin's photo. I believe he lives in Czech Republic. So far as I know, Peru, Ecuador, Venezuela, but it's probably found in other countries. What's interesting about Fimbriata, it's not just the lip. As I said, many Sobralias will have fimbriate lips, but this has fimbriate petals. I mean, it's not a major thing, the petals, but there's some fimbriation at least. Next. Fragrance, widespread in many countries. One of Greg's photos on the upper left. My not so nice photo in the lower right. Next. More fragrant than others. Hirta. I've never grown. I'm pretty sure Christensen sent me the photo at the right from Ecuador. May have also sent me the photo from Peru, the left. Next. But that again has a fimbriate lip. And Withneri, named for Carl Withner, also fimbriate lip, but not really the petals so much. Beautiful, beautiful side image. Next. Things that you don't want to be tempted to grow, although, you know, maybe in Hawaii you can try anything, honest to God. Next. Okay, Caloglosa. And why wouldn't you want to grow this? Well, because they grow 20 feet tall. They snake through into the ovary. Very, very big plants, pretty flowers, but next. And they grow at great elevations. Sobralia cattleya, next, different color forms. Crocea, 7,000 feet, 8,000 feet, very high in Ecuador Andes. Yeah. But beautiful foliage. I've grown it before, but I can't keep it alive through summers, even when I get it near my wet walls with some other cool growing stuff. Hummingbird pollinated tubular flowers, mostly orange, yellow. This is the color on the upper left was accentuated. Dichotoma is lovely. This is the Sobralia at Machu Picchu in Peru. Next, red and purplish forms, and super long canes. You could try Elizabethae. There can be some really nice forms of this. Next, if you can find it. Gloriosa. These photos are from Greg Alakas. He saw these growing on a hillside in Ecuador, Colombia, Ecuador, and sent them for me to use. Okay, next. They're also on the website. Oh, I have a website. It's called the Sobralia Pages. So Sobralia people. Moving on. Robert Dressler, who passed away a few years ago, hugely long career, published widely, did Sobralias on the side, but still he did 26 plus Sobralia species. So I'd say he's more than anybody else in among anonymous. He has more of his credit than anyone else. And this was an interesting article that was in Orchids magazine, I think in 2009. Next. Eric Christensen also passed away at this time, almost a dozen, identified quite a number of Sobralias. Next. Ted Green. Don't know if Ted is still around and here or not. But he did write a book, Orchids in Hawaii, and he wrote several articles about Sobralias. One was in the AOS magazine, Orchids. One was in Hawaii Orchid Journal, and some other places.
Just for your info, Ted is still alive and he just...
In Oahu.
Ah, okay, good. Is he still growing plants?
I don't know about the orchids, but he grows, what is it? Hoya, I believe.
Hoya, okay. All right, well, thank you for the info. So he's in Oahu now.
celebrated
His what?
his wife, Dorothy, does most of the gardening now. He's not really able.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for letting me know. All right. Right. So here's a map of the island and some photos that he had sent me, and I'm trying to remember. I guess the red dots corresponded to the imagery that we're looking at here. So the dot on the left would be a view from the photo on the left, the dot on the right, photo on the right. So different collections around the island. Next. Right, Sobralias need roots. Unlike cattleyas, where you could cut the roots off and they will regrow new roots from the pseudobulbs. If you cut the roots off a Sobralia or rot them off, it's over. Game over. It's done. It's done. Don't even bother waiting. You can, however, cut most of the stems off as long as that root system is intact, and the stems will grow back. And that's important to know when you're buying plants or checking out plants. Next. Okay, so shoots on the left, some new shoots coming out. Also the right, some new shoots in the center, the reddish sheathed one. Next. You can see I grow in plastic mostly because it keeps the moisture in. These pictures are from, this is Merida on the west side of Venezuela. Sobralia is being used as bedding plants. Next. Okay, so photo on the left from Oak Hill Gardens, back when they were a going concern. And the force of the roots, these root balls get so big and so strong that they'll break pots open. And they, I guess this Sobralia in particular was there just to provide shade for the phales underneath, although I'm sure anything coming out of that pot might have dirtied the white phale blooms. Yeah, plant on the right, that's me. So they grow in nice gallon pots and then some. Next. Different collections. These not my greenhouse. Well, the one on the left was one of Dave Hunt's greenhouses with a number of Sobralias in the center. You can see one. The photo on the right is from an orchid grower in North Carolina. And he had, you can see that was a bench originally meant for lots of different plants, and the Sobralia was taking up much of the space. Next. Elianthus, related to Sobralia, but it's a whole different genus with lots of complications, and nobody's really written enough or studied enough of these. However, you can buy them. You know, they're offered for that photo on the right is probably from Redlands. So you can find these plants. This foliage in some cases looks a lot like Sobralia, and you can be surprised unless you see an inflorescence at the top. You can figure out what they are. Next. I don't think I have too much to say on Elianthus here. All right, so here's our summary. The genus was established back in 1784, found from Mexico throughout Latin America. There's over 100 species. Rolfe, 120 years ago, wrote that they are, Sobralias are the glory of tropical America. They call these flowers fugitive flowers because they don't last very long. Large size in many of the species, and that's why they've not been so popular. But they do rival Cattleyas in brilliant color, it's true. Next, I think we're finished there. No, not quite. Can't remember why I have that in there, but I do for some reason. Okay, anyway, that's more or less the talk. If you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Stop this share.
Yeah. Okay, good. And there's Tom.
So anybody have any questions for Nina? Looks like Tom, you have your hand up.
Or he's waving.
Oh,
You
you
can't-
must be mute.
You're muted, Tom.
So Tom, you're on mute.
I'm working on it.
Oh,
Okay,
there you go.
There he
Now
is.
we hear you.
so,
What country are you in?
well, I didn't actually have any questions because you were so very thorough. But I thought, let me see if I can think of something.
Well, she did ask where you're at right now in your travels.
Oh, I am in Jamaica with Claude Hamilton, who spoke to us on Brotonias a few months
Wonderful.
back. And we're having a great time, seeing all kinds of amazing things. It's been really great being here. He's been the perfect host in every way. So, Nina, do you want to talk about why Sobralias bloom synchronously the way they do? Is there a reason?
I wish I knew. Can you tell us? Is it not a pheromonal thing? There are other groups of plants that do this. I assume for breeding, I'm going to guess here because it'll facilitate breeding between all the plants if they're all open at the same time. Although it's a lot of acreage for pollinators to cover.
Yeah, the theory is that they bloom synchronously the way they do in order to, it's a way of keeping their interest-specific genes together, because oftentimes, I think the article that you showed that Carl, that Robert Dressler wrote about why Sobralias are, maybe they're unclassifiable now. The thing is that Sobralias will bloom en masse like that, and that's a strategy so that they don't cross-pollinate with other species, and different species will actually bloom on different days.
Yeah, yeah.
what's happened in Latin America is that Sobralias are like pioneer plants that come into disturbed areas like roadsides.
Yeah,
That's why
among
you
the
often,
first, yeah, to
that's why you see
colonize.
them on the side of the road. And so if you have 2 or 3 species growing side by side on the side of the road, even though they might bloom on different days, eventually you're going to have a day where more than one species will bloom. And then you'll get cross-pollination and what they call a hybrid swarm.
Yeah,
And that's why if you drive around in Latin America, you're sort of like a homogenized version, an introgressed Sobralia that you see all over the place. That's probably the result of breeding, of cross-pollination of several species. So that's the original ecology probably had something to do with a tree falling over and having pioneer plants come in, and on a small scale, blooming on different days works. But on a large scale, it becomes a hybrid swarm. I don't know if that made any sense to anyone, but
yeah, it does. It does. Oh.
Get that back there.
Bring that back. What Sobralias were grown at the Smithsonian?
oh gosh. Well, we had Bushii, we had Macrantha. I wish we had Rogersiana, but our flowers were not quite that large. We had Sobralia calosa, of course,
Oh, lovely.
the little
Yeah.
miniature one.
Yeah,
Really
fantastic.
it's such a great plant. And by the way, that you can purchase that plant at Tropical Orchid Farm
They
if you
still
wanted.
have closes? Oh, great.
I think they do. He tends to hold on to things, so I can't
Yeah.
imagine him selling out of anything because he likes to hold on to
Doesn't
things
get to
for a
part
while.
with stuff, yeah.
Xantha Luca and Luca Xantha were both there. He has we had Yawa periensis,
Oh, yeah.
and I wanted to
That's
mention, I'm actually not certain now of what it was, but I was just on this wonderful island in Panama called Gobernadora Island. And there were a few people there that have beautiful orchid collections. And one orchid that was around a lot was what I've been calling it Sobralia decora.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure it's decora because it makes keikis. And I think decora is the only species that makes keikis, but it looks a lot like Cecilis too. So I'm not sure. The other thing is
Escalus should have it's a larger growing plant and larger flowers supposedly. And but-
these were big, beautiful flowers. I'll send you the pictures I have of it. And well, but
did the
anyway,
petals twist at the end like Cecilis does? And there's
Does what?
something about the stem. There's something about the cross section of the stem of Cecilis. That's one of the ways to define to distinguish.
Okay, well, I don't know that character, but I'll happily send you the photos. And
Great.
the thing about it though was that they were, I've always grown decora as a terrestrial plant, but all of them on this island were epiphytes.
Oh.
I didn't see any in the ground. They were all in trees with beautiful root systems going up and down large trees. So
Nice.
yeah. And I got a seed pod, which I gave to Claude. So Claude will have them in about 5 years.
Good. Hopefully he'll be safeguarding those.
Mhm.
Great.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm Alice Jensen, and I can say that I was very proud in 2012 in January. We're going with Tom's trip. It was very exciting to see the Sobralias at the roadside, and it's more exciting to see them not in see plants not in confined areas, you might say.
Yes.
And one question. Has it been tried to hybridize them with another orchid genus?
Yes, and thank you for asking that because I forgot to include that. There has been a registered hybrid with Sobralia and, believe it or not, Blatilla. And I'm sorry, I forgot to include a slide of that. That was in a different version of the talk.
Blatilla is also growing terrestrial,
Yes.
and that could make sense.
Yeah.
And also I know Dr. Robert Dressler, and I was going to ask when he passed away. You just mentioned about 2 years ago, and I had it in 2012. I had him sign two of his books. So because I knew Dr. Dressler from when he was in St. Louis many years ago. And
Wonderful. I have the utmost
another
respect for
question
that.
is, when you say that the genus was established in 1794, and I'm also studying botanical illustrations. And so there are apparently not any very old botanical illustrations anyplace. That would have to be, or were they possibly existing before they figured out what the genus would be called.
I would have to
Botanical
look.
illustrations is a very interesting thing to study.
Mhm. Where I would check for more information about the history of botanical illustrations of Sobralia would be Rudolf Jenny's Litbull database, Swiss Orchid Foundation. He has the biggest database of all orchid information that I know of.
What's the man's name?
His name is Rudolf, R-U-D.
Yeah, Rudolf I can spell.
Yes, Jenny, Jenny. He lives in Almendingen, Switzerland.
Jenn.
J for John, Enny. Yeah,
What comes after the Jenny?
that's it. His last name is Jenny.
Oh,
Yeah, Rudolf Jenny. And he, which he might pronounce like a Y, but it's called the Swiss Orchid Foundation, and his database is called Litbull, Litbul. And I would probably search there if I wanted to research and find out what the oldest published illustration is. I don't know that, and that's a good question. I should
of the
probably figure that
and
out.
the reason I got recently so excited about the botanical illustrations in Nuremberg, in the city of Nuremberg, my son was there on business, and he anyway, he had a holiday off, and he was seeing exhibits of botanical illustrations. And Nuremberg is such a center of botanical illustrations that they can, on their exhibit, they can change the portfolios every month for a year. And that is names of the people of the botanical illustrations. And that's an interesting thing to study because you get so much more detail than you do otherwise on things. And so some of those people, he copied for me some of the things that were written with it. And so I have some books, and I can research that more of
Great.
botanical illustrations, and details are much better than modern photography.
I'll have to look into that more for Sobralias and see how that could be searched.
All right, thank you, Alice. I think Matthias, did you have your hand up? Or did you just step away? Anybody else with any questions? Oh, there's Matthias. He's back.
The black.
Oh, yeah. because I'm working intermittently, so I had to run and bring my plug tray to the other greenhouse. Anyways, I wanted to ask you, I made the acquaintance on Facebook with Bruce Rogers,
Great.
and
Great.
he mentioned to me that his list would come out in March, so I can get a few plants from him. So maybe you can contact him and say, Bruce, sell him as many as possible, please.
I could. I owe him a phone call anyway, so that's good. I'm glad.
In a whole bunch. So if anybody else is interested in some, I'll bring in more, and then I can distribute them here in Hawaii. And I also want to make them, of course, seed pods. So
Do you
Ricardo,
do your own flasking? Or
no, not,
okay.
but we do have a lab here on island.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
yes, my friend Ricardo from Winning Orchids, we both have the Clutchiana, the white one that you showed in the first picture. And so we set seed pods on them, and he was really successful with getting the flask and everything. It was very difficult to grow them from flasks. So you have any pointers? I mean, when I
No.
separate them one plant by plant, they would all die. And so then we just took a whole clump out of the flask and basically just cleaned off the media and put them in a pot. And that seemed to work better, but it was still the death rate was incredible. So
when I've sent pods out, I sent a long time ago. I sent a few to Mrs. Roots in California, but I've sent more pods to Troy Myers. I don't know if you're familiar with Myers Conservatory. I really should put a plug in for these people. They propagate everything, a species only. And they have a very interesting distribution system. You can submit a seed pod of a species as long as you've got good documentation on what it is and send a photo. And they'll propagate it for free at no cost, but they'll only create as many replate flasks as they have orders for. So they'll put it into their database and they'll show the progress. They show, they'll check out the seed to see if it's got enough viable, they'll look at it. And then they'll replate as many as they have pre-sold. It's the same price for everything, whether you had a really rare Cattleya or you had a Blatilla striata, for instance. And they have been a clearinghouse for an unbelievable number of really interesting species. And they've been playing around with their media, and they know more about media than anybody I know of for the greatest variety of genera. Troy Myers, and it's Myers Conservatory, probably .com, but it could be .org. He lives on an island outside of Seattle.
Well, thank you for sharing.
I visited once, but a very interesting lab. Four employees or so. That's about it.
It looks like Kathy Pinwell and myself will be ready when you're ready to sell some there, Matthias.
Tom's got his hand up.
I'm hoping that I'm going to get as many as possible. And if I may ask one more question in regards to the repotting, as you mentioned that the Sobralias have an enormous root system, and I can attest to that. I mean, they're just ginormous. Yeah. So I do have one that definitely needs to be taken out of the spot where it is. And I'm afraid that it has grown into the lava and stuff like that. So when I would be, that would mean that definitely going to get butchered. So better not to touch it at all, or
if you can save a lot of the roots, I'm sure it's a numbers game. If you can get a large percentage of them out, it'll be fine. Once they start spreading horizontally, I think it's over. But if you can keep them within pots, then it's all right. Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
You might photograph, you might document the entire experience and do a cute YouTube video about what it's like to try to extricate a Sobralia once it's gone wild.
We'll be out there Monday. You can show us.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing.
All right.
Looks like Tom, you have your hand up.
I was going to say that several years ago, Mark Whitten told me that he was able to germinate Sobralia seeds just on peat moss.
Excellent.
And they don't really require flasking or a mycorrhizal fungus to germinate. So excellent. It should be entirely possible to grow them here. I would think you just probably have to be, really careful. Maybe use fungicide in the initial stages so they don't rot away. But I don't think I would even try to do them in flask. I think I'd just try to sow them directly on soil. Because I've seen seedlings coming up just on the side of the road. They don't really seem to need the symbionts. So it's worth a try. If you pollinate a few flowers and get a bunch of pods, I'd just experiment with that. And I bet they'll grow a lot faster than they will trying to extricate them from a flask.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
All right.
Maybe could be one more imported species into Hawaii's fauna, flora.
All right.
We're good?
Any last questions? All right. Well, I'd like to thank Nina for a great presentation.
Thank
I
you.
really enjoyed it. She's going to be on island for a couple more days. So we're going to go on Monday to go visit Matthias at Shogun Orchids and then Karen over at Sun Island Orchids. So she can see some of the nurseries here on island before she has to leave back for Houston. So.
No, I'm going to Kauai.
Oh, are you going to
Yeah,
Kauai
of
next?
course. Another
Oh,
week in
okay.
Kauai. It'll be great. Haven't been there for years.
So, with that, I just want to share before everybody takes off, our next meeting is set for March 12th on Saturday, same time at 2 o'clock. This is the time we kind of transition into our show and tell. So you're more than welcome to share your orchids you have at home. So if you're ready, just wave your hand. I'll call you in and you start showing them off. Anybody got anything? It's gonna be quiet this time around. Oh,
Charles has his hand up.
Oh, so
Lance here, I've got one, a gift from
Okay.
Matthias. Does Pride, Good Hope. It's got an AOS award, but it's faded enough I can't read what the award is. It's huge. It's nicely fragrant. It had a nice bloom cycle for me back in November. Guess what it's doing now in February? And it's got another sheath just starting. Pretty thin
Oh,
yet,
all right.
but apparently it'll bloom at pretty much any time of the year. Look at that lip.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Really, I love that color. Color yellow.
All right, thank you. I guess Matthias-
Are Sobralias often fragrant, except for the one that has its name, fragrance?
Fragrance? No, not really. No. Not that I have
Usually
observed.
not. So,
Yeah, no.
okay.
Sorry.
I think Matthias, you had your hand up.
Yeah, let me just, I'm kind of walking through the arenas. I gotta figure this out. How am I gonna turn this around? Oh, it doesn't do that, huh? How am I gonna turn this? Anyway,
Button lower right, iPhone.
I know it's a new iPhone. I should have, oh, there it is. Hey,
Hey, there it is.
Okay.
walking. Well, I have my, right now it's the time of the year where all the Hisako songs, that is one of my crosses are flowering. And my awarded one is just making two beautiful, gorgeous flowers.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
look at the
right.
pattern on the, oh, nice petals, interesting.
Yeah, it has the beautiful,
Upright dorsal sepal.
yeah, two beautiful white stripes on it, which makes the whole look of the flower.
Yeah.
So this my cross calls Hisako song. And I have another one, which I named, I don't even remember what that, I have so many of the Hisako songs that I can't remember which variety that is, but I think that was like, let's party. It's not like I don't have any Cattleyas. Well, there's the other one.
Same seed pod?
Same seed pod. So this one is, yeah, let's party. So that's a Hisako song, let's party. Really magenta, dark petals with the beautiful golden throat. And the other inflorescence has 4 flowers on, and there's 3 more spikes to come. It's a very floriferous plant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful thing. And the only other thing that looks decent, it's the season of the Lodomaniana species from Venezuela. So most of them in my other greenhouse where I can go, but I do have one Emmy-Alba here.
Oh, I love
A little
it.
bit potted already. For my apologies. It's the humidity when it rains, it just kills it.
Fantastic.
But it's still, the lip is really nice. The shape is a little questionable because I just repotted it
Super
not too long
large
ago.
bark.
And I changed the media from the smaller bark to the really big pieces. So it's a major adjustment for the plants. And so they take usually a year off until they adjust to the new media. And there's one of Ben's plants. It's a miniature, which I really like because of the vibrant color. This is Miyuki's Little King, Dark Star. Appropriate name. It's a really super vibrant flower. Something beautiful. And it's a short plant. So you can see it's not even high, I would say maybe 6 inches. Very floriferous. I just chopped this up a little bit, so that's why it's not blooming any further, but it's a beautiful thing. And the last one here, this is Kiovi type. This is one that is not very often seen, but it has, in my opinion, the best color. It's really orangey yellow with the big spotted lip from the Nodoso influence.
That's a lot of windows there.
Yeah, this is the V Galaxy. So everybody usually has Newberry. And what is the other one? Mendenhall and Kio. Those are the two that are very common. So this is a little bit more uncommon. That's my show and tell. Aloha Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Rick? It's waving. No?
No.
Oh, you're just saying bye.
Okay.
Okay.
Jeff Fendens has plants.
Who does?
I got something.
Oh,
Let's see.
Oh,
This is Sophronite, excuse me.
you sure don't either.
Yes, it's Cosmic Delight.
Ah,
Cosmic Delight.
light.
And all my dendrobiums are going off right now, like crazy. Here's a
Nice display.
few. The white one in there with a yellow lip.
no.
And I wanted to show you.
Yeah, is that a
See that
dendrophile?
very well, tenulum, Dendrochilum tenulum.
Yeah, nice, nice, nice.
I'm on the porch, so the wind is blowing like crazy over here today.
Jeff, that's a grass. That's not an orchid.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, show you the flowers closer. And that's a rooster, actually. That's the rooster plant. I call
that's
it.
hilarious.
Got that.
And I got this Magnum, Dendrochilum magnum.
I like dendrophiles.
That is not Magnum.
That
Not
no,
Magnum.
It's the wrong
much
time of the year.
Magnum.
In summer.
Too much what?
Magnum blooms in the
You're breaking up.
I'm pretty sure this is Magnum. Is what it's what I bought it as and what it's known for.
It's just a confused Magnum.
There you go.
Here's this other thing that I showed before, which I had thought originally was something like Victoria Regina, but it was obviously not. And now I'm thinking that it might be something like this, a nobile crossed with Kingiana. What do you think?
No.
You're 12.
No.
No, it would have a very different habit if Kingianum was in it. I think it's just either a hybrid of nobile or a related species. There's a lot of dendrobium species, like
This is
thousands.
this is in bloom all year long.
Yeah,
It has flowers every single day.
Jeff.
I would
Yeah.
show it. You'd take a photo and send it to Karen Kimmerly. She will know what it is.
Oh yeah, I could bring it to her house.
There you go. Do that.
And I have a Rainanthera or
Good.
What is it?
Renanthera.
Renetia. Yeah, Renetia.
Renanthera crossed with Neophanetia.
Yes, that is correct. That's mine.
All right, thank you.
I like.
Anyone else? All right, if there isn't anyone else, I guess we're gonna close our meeting. I just want to I forgot to mention, Tom will be back on island by the end of the month, and he's working on a local presenter for the next Orchid meeting. So we don't have it nailed down yet, but we're looking to reach out to one of our local Orchid aficionados to put on a presentation for us. So stay tuned, we'll get that out to you. And we wish you all a nice afternoon and evening, and we'll see you again on March 12th. Aloha.
Hello.